Hey, what's going on, everybody? RogersBase here with a special Halloween edition of my One Piece anime reviews. Tonight, we're going to be going over One Piece anime episode 716, Stardust of Death, Diamante Storm of Vicious Attacks. And as you guys can see, I'm dressed up as Senior Pink this Halloween. I have a full image of this outfit on my Twitter. You guys can go check that out. I might even edit that in the thumbnail. This was an amazing Halloween. I was on a Disney panel. We got to talk about One Piece. I met a ton of you guys on the show floor. As you can see, I got my full Senior Pink outfit, put this together last minute. It turned out amazing. So many of you guys even recognized me on the show floor. You were like, Senor, you're so hard-boiled. And I'm like, I am so glad that you guys knew who I am. And it's perfect because this week was the finale of the Frankie versus Senior Pink fight. I actually didn't work it out that way. That just happens to be how it was. And I gotta say, that first half of the episode with the finale of the Frankie and Senior Pink stuff where we see, Frankie wipe away Senior Pink's tears and he says, it's pathetic, why are you crying? But he actually knows that he's crying because of a lost love. And he says, once this is all over, maybe we should meet up for a drink and you could tell me about that woman named Russian. And I was like, oh, because that final attack that Frankie did to Senior Pink where he's just wailing on him with like the force of 100 punches and you just see Senior Pink's glasses shatter. And he looks up in the sky, and the rain has finally stopped. Sunlight's coming through, and he can finally join his love, Russian. Oh, my God. The way the music swelled, the animation in that first half, I didn't even mind that it was like 7 minutes of recap. I really didn't even mind, because the way that they built it up, and they showed off Senior Pink in his full outfit for the first time, and they showed the other Doflamingo family members making fun of him, it was brilliant. And I'm not just saying that because I'm a Senior Pink fan and I'm dressed up as Senior Pink. I actually thought that whole first half of this episode was really, really good. And I especially like once the fight was finally over. And again, there were so many beautifully animated shots of that final fight where he's standing over Senior Pink and there's just like this bloom lighting that goes over him. And you see Senior Pink's face and there's like the tears streaming down it with the blood. And then when Frankie wipes away the tears, it was amazing. It was amazing. It was such a good first half of this episode. And I think the thing that made it even better on top of the animation was the music. I didn't recognize half of those tracks. They were using like what sounded like new music, and it really fit the tone. I think the anime has done a phenomenal job with the Frankie and Senior Pink fight. I do think this still could have all been one episode as opposed to split in two, but I think that fight overall was magnificent in the anime. Props to Toei Animation. They obviously put in a lot of animation budget. They put in a lot of time to make that right because Senior Pink's a popular character. People love Senior Pink, and who could blame them? He's hard-boiled. But anyway, let's move past the Senior Pink and Frankie stuff. The one last thing I do want to talk about before we fully move on is that little splash where it said, okay, Frankie and Senior Pink, the fight at the factory is done. And then you see Frankie and he's going to go charge the factory and he's got his Terminator eye and steam's coming off of his body. And as he's running along with the Tontada, you notice that he's really wrecked. And I think that, again, goes to show what a powerful, good opponent Senior Pink was. Like, of all the executives, of all the other characters, Dellinger, Gladius, I can't even remember half of them. Lao G, I love Lao G though, and I like in the flashback how he was like, Anyway, so of all the executive characters beyond Diamante, Pika, and Treble, I do think Senior Pink is the most iconic. He's a character that I would not be surprised if he ended up getting a cover story at some point. And on top of that, they made him really powerful because, as I mentioned, you could see that Frankie is breaking down in that one scene when they're at the factory. The Tontada are running off, and the Senior Pink girls are watching over Senior Pink, and the Tontada are crying, Fräulein, Fräulein. And then as they're running off, you see from the perspective of Frankie, you see like that red eye, and it just starts shutting down. He's like, I leave it to you, Tontadas. And he thinks about Luffy, and he just shuts down and falls over. It was like, the way that was done was so cool. And I don't know, it gave all the more impact to that fight between Frankie and Senior Pink. It really made it seem, like that fight was truly epic, and that was worth a one-on-one fight in Dressrosa. With that being said, when we moved on to the Kuros and Diamante stuff with Robin and Rebecca, I was not expecting anything this episode at all, especially because that didn't even start till the second half of this episode. And based on the pacing of all the other fights, I was like, oh man. And on top of that, the title of next week's episode is about Kuros' final attack, like the True No Bastard or whatever. And I think it's crazy that clearly looks like this episode wrapped up all the Kuros and Diamante stuff. And knowing what happens in the manga, I mean, this last attack is the attack that takes down Diamante. So it's really, it kind of blows my mind that they rushed all of that in half an episode, but they dragged out that Bartolomeo Cavendish stuff from a couple episodes ago into 3 episodes, when that was clearly not worth it. I don't know, if the animation just wasn't there, or they wanted to really build up the animation for the Senior Pink Frankie stuff and the Diamante Kiro stuff. I don't know, but the Kiros Diamante stuff also looked beautiful. I mean, animation-wise, it was awesome when they're running through the sunflower field and you see like the sunflowers rippling. You see Diamante, toss out like his little confetti cannons that blow up into the stardust of death. It was great. It was really wonderfully animated, especially when Robin did the sunflower umbrella, and you see like all her hands coming up through the ground, cutting off the sunflowers, and then they create that giant umbrella over Rebecca. I loved it. I mean, I thought that was a really great little segment. I thought it was animated well. I thought the music during that segment was great. I think when Diamante was taunting Rebecca and Kiros, and he shoots Kiros in the leg and says, "This is the same gun I killed Scarlet with," and he's just really being a jerk. And Rebecca's like, "I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you, I'll never forgive you for this." Then Diamante's going back at her like, "Oh yeah, you never forgive me? Yeah, right, that's what you should feel. Like, I'm going to kill you like I killed your stupid mom." It was like, whoa, man, whoa. But when Kiros gets up from the attack after taking all that stardust, and he's standing there in the rain, and the spike balls are raining down on him, I mean, what more could you ask for? The way that was done, the way the animation looked, spliced between the stuff with Rebecca screaming, and the way the music swelled, and the way he was giving the speech about how, Rebecca will never need to sully her hands. Scarlet said that she should never get her hands dirty, that she should stay out of fighting, she should never have to fight anyone, and, we get the flashback of Kiros as the Tin Soldier teaching her how to dodge and use observation hockey. That whole speech, when Kiros finally gets up and starts, jet walking, and is going to, like, knock out Diamante for the last time, was epic. And I actually think the to be continued stamp at the end really worked in this episode's favor, because I think ending it with that last statement from Kiros, knowing that Diamante is going to get it, Diamante is not getting out of this, it's done, was great. I think it was great. But again, it makes me question, why were those other fights dragged out so long, and then this one, which is against an executive, was rushed so quickly. Again, I don't mind that it's only going to be one episode between this episode, the second half of this episode, and the first half of next episode, but the pacing is just very strange considering we had like an episode and a half of Frankie Senior Pink. Even though I guess the Frankie Senior Pink one had a little bit of Luffy and Bellamy in it too. I don't know, it's weird how they've been pacing some of these fights. And again, I think a lot of that had to do with the Bartolomeo and Cavendish stuff. But overall, I think this episode was really, really solid. I think those 2 big centerpieces, the Frankie Senior Pink bit at the beginning, with the amazing animation, with the flashback, with Frankie wiping away the tears, with the glasses shattering, him looking up at Russian and Senior Pink just being the boss that he is, taking the full brunt of Frankie's attack. And then we get that mid-ground, and then we get Kiros and Diamante, and then we get Rebecca and Robin protecting her with the sunflower umbrella, and then Kiros finally getting up. I mean, it was all great. Everything about this episode was great. I can't say that it was fantastic just because of the way it was paced and the way it was spliced together. But it was, and on top of the fact that like the whole first 8 minutes is pretty much recap, even though it's sort of done in a different way, a lot of it was recap. But overall, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I watched this episode and I wanted more. I definitely again, I think it worked in the episode's favor for them to end it where they ended it, where Kiros slashes Diamante, but ultimately, I wanted more of that fight. I wanted to see the finale of that fight. We didn't end up getting it, but it was fine. I think it was a very solid episode after all. I do think that finale of the Frankie Senior Pink stuff is eventually going to be more iconic than a lot of the stuff that happened with Kiros and Diamante, but I think that scene of Kiros getting up and jet walking and blowing away Diamante for the last time is also going to be just as iconic. I think because of those 2 iconic bits in this episode, I can't give this anything less than a 4 out of 5. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, well, that seems really high, but honestly, I really enjoyed this episode. There wasn't really a lot I could fault for it because the music was amazing, the animation was amazing, and I don't necessarily think it's fair to fault the episode, for pacing issues of previous episodes. A lot of that stuff is decided by the animation directors for the episodes for the Cavendish and Bartolomeo fight, and honestly, again, I think the animation director for this one and all the musicians and everybody who was involved with this did a much better job and did the best they could with the material they were given and, how to space it out. Ultimately, like I said, I really enjoyed it, and I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. But guys, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this week's episode. Again, I really enjoyed it, but maybe a lot of you guys are going to hate it. Let me know in the comments below. I saw a lot of you guys really didn't like last week's episode. Last review got a lot of dislikes, so I'm assuming a lot of you didn't like that episode, which is surprising to me because I actually think it was a really well-animated episode, and I think it did a better job than the manga did, but I understand still because of some of the pacing issues that happened last episode, and I definitely think it should have ended with the first half of this episode where Frankie wipes away the tears and said, if we ever meet again, I'll get a drink with you. And again, For those of you guys who are anime only, and even for those of you guys who read the manga, we haven't seen Senior Pink again since. I need a cover story from that man. He's hard-boiled, he's an amazing character, and Oda loves him, and the Japanese public loves him, so I'm sure we're going to get more of him eventually. But like this video if you liked anything I had to say. Please be sure to subscribe, because I'm going to bring you guys more One Piece reviews next week. Have a very happy Halloween. Stay safe out there tonight, guys. And until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.